Hello, everyone. I'm Donna Fiducia.
And I'm Don Neuen. And this is Cowboy Logic Radio.
Cowboys didn't dance, didn't wear designer shirts. When their hearts were filled with memories, their bodies filled with hurt. They would sit around the campfire and exchange a piercing glance. Back when the West was really wild, cowboys didn't dance.
I'm Don Neuen, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Don Neuen, ladies and gentlemen.
Honey,
and what? Yeah,
we're on right now.
Oh.
The show has already started. Welcome to Cowboy Logic
Good evening,
Radio.
ladies and gentlemen. I'm Don Neuen. Welcome to tonight's Cowboy Logic Radio Show. Boy,
have we got a
big
one.
Hey, you're stepping on my lines here.
I'm just trying to lip read as you speak, but normally
You
it's
never
boy,
know what
have
I'm
we
gonna
got
say, though.
something.
All right, so
Usually
here-
say, boy, have we got a fantastic show for you or whatever.
Ladies and gentlemen, and boys, have we got a big show for you tonight, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I'd like to say hello to all of our affiliates. First of all, our digital flagship station. That would be Red Nation Rising Radio at rednationrising.us. Then we've got our terrestrial flagship station,
DDQ.
Talk 92.1. WDDQ. WDDQ. Hey, servicing South Georgia. You know, I got to tell you, the friends and the fans in South Georgia and North Florida, and for that matter, West Georgia. Mm-hmm. I would not have it any other way. You know what I'm saying, Donna?
They're the best. They
you know
are
what
the
I mean,
best.
Donna?
And
hey,
the
Donna,
truckers.
you know what I mean?
And the truckers going
Hey,
up
Donna,
and down.
Donna.
Yo, I do know what you
know what I mean,
I know
Donna?
what you're talking about.
All right, so at any rate, back to WDDQ, Talk 92.1 FM, serving South Georgia, based in Adel, baby. Mm-hmm. Then we move further south, and we would like to say hello to all our friends in Jasper, Florida, at WJHC, Talk 107.5 FM, and our most recent addition to our affiliate lineup.
Just a stone's throw away from
That's right.
our farm.
That's right. That's WLBB, 1330 AM.
I wonder if
You
Steve
got it.
Graddick has scraped off the fake news that
My
was spray
understanding is
painted
that
on
he
the
did
side of the building.
sandblast the side of the building and got fake news taken off. Ladies and gentlemen, if you
That
missed
was
the show
too
last
funny.
week, our buddy Steve Graddick that owns Graddick Communications and is gracious enough to allow us on his airwaves at WLBB 1330 AM.
Mm-hmm.
He had some schmuck spray paint across the side of his building, fake news in black spray paint.
Which we happened to find out because we were buying horse feed at the same Ace Hardware
That's right.
Southern Home and Ranch on Route 27
That's right.
in Carrollton, Georgia.
Boy, that was a shameless plug, Donna.
Yes, and he was buying a paint remover.
Paint remover to take off the fake news paint.
That was too funny.
But here's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking that Brother Richard, who's with the Carroll County Sheriff's Department, and some of
Big
the other
Brother
fine
Richard.
folks, need to put a serious West Georgia southern rural flyover country whoop ass on whoever ended up spray painting that. And I think that's probably right around the pike. Back to you, Donna.
Yes, that's true, Don. And we do want to say hello to everyone listening. We hope you had a great week.
That's right. And Donna, we do have one other organization, one other media outlet that we need to say hello to. Ladies and gentlemen, I learned something tonight about the beautiful Donna Fiducia. Donna Fiducia used to write when living in New Jersey for a newspaper entitled The Italian Tribune.
Yo, I did.
So here's what I'm thinking.
That was my first job in high school.
First of all, do they start every sentence in every paragraph that they've got in these articles with "yo"?
No, they don't. You know what I did, though, seriously? Yo, you know what I did?
Yo.
It's this little local newspaper, and all the Italians in the region would send in, Samantha's graduating from high school. And
Samantha who?
Joey.
Samantha who?
Samantha Pagliano. And Joey Bag of Donuts. He's graduating.
Bag of Donuts. I know him. he used to play drums. No, that was Tony Bag of Donuts.
Whatever. But and so what we do is we put all these things together. This is my job. We put all these things together into this little newspaper, and it'd have to fit.
The Italian Tribune.
Yeah, and I Asa Langa owned it. I'm sure he's gone to heaven since then, but his family, I do believe, still runs it. And finally, I went to him.
The Italian Tribune.
Finally, I went to him and I said, can I get a byline here at least once in a while? So, and you know what he let me do? No. He let me write. I was a huge hockey fan, still am, but followed it really, really religiously because that's all you can do in New Jersey in the wintertime is ice skate.
Follow hockey.
So, yeah, exactly. So I used to go watch the Rangers every night. Stop. And I took pictures. I took pictures, and I actually wrote, the Rangers were making it into the playoffs, and I wrote a story, and I had a picture of that I took of the players on the ice, and he let me write a little sports thing there, because I really thought I was going to get into sports. And that's when they finally gave you a
bisexual.
No, they gave me a byline.
Byline.
Yes.
Big difference, ladies, my bad.
No, exactly.
Hey, Donna, let me ask you a question. When you're on the ground there and you look up in the sky there and you got planes flying over, how can you tell it's the Italian Air Force? You know?
I have no idea.
They got hair under the wings.
Will you stop?
Cha-ting, bing.
Man.
That was for our buddy Gene Baradelli, who's
and Russ Gallo,
and Vito
and Vito,
and
Tom Del Beccaro,
and Rocky Stucci, and all the other paisanos that we got there on Red Nation Rising Radio. Okay.
Hey, don't mess with us, man. Don't mess.
All right. So at any rate, the joke, Donna, though, was you look up in the sky, you can tell it's the Italian Air Force with the hair under the wings.
Yeah, I get that.
Now, I never understood why that was.
I have no idea. Well, actually,
but
I
check
do.
your legs in 3 days, right?
Speaking of ethnicity, you do know you have to be Irish to work at the Fox News Channel. I was one of the exceptions.
I'm Irish.
Yes. Let's talk about
Donna,
Sean
hold
Hannity.
on, before you talk about the Irishman, Sean Hannity.
Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, I want to let you know tonight, and this is not a shameless plug. What's the name of the meal that we have?
What meal? Oh, Blue Apron.
Blue Apron. Blue Apron.
I like Blue Apron.
Blue Apron's pretty good, and Donna's got me eating it, and makes me healthy and strong.
I got him eating kale.
I eat kale, ladies and gentlemen. That does not mean I'm a vegetarian. Now, I got to tell you something, though. I ate for the first time tonight black beans.
It was good.
That, and I was so hungry I could have eaten corn out of my own poop. But having said that, Donna,
that's a lovely
you should have seen the look on her face when that came out, ladies and gentlemen. And quite honestly, after eating those black beans, I may be able to eat something out of my own poop. But
I'm going to be sleeping in another bedroom tonight.
Nah, I've got good control over that flatulence thing.
Okay.
Having said that, though, ladies and gentlemen, I did eat a lot of black beans tonight, and I might, have to poot later on during the show.
Can you tell that he's been watching Rambo on the Sundance Channel?
We didn't watch Rambo. Well, yeah, we did.
We did.
That was on.
And a bunch of spaghetti westerns with Clint Eastwood. He was great.
Hey, Outlaw Jersey Wales is not a spaghetti western.
I guess not, but his horses are gorgeous. I bet you the horse he rode in that black horse with the 4 white legs and the blaze in the front of his face, I bet you that was Clint Eastwood's personal horse back then.
Might have been.
That was way too nice a horse.
It definitely was after the movie.
Yes.
Oh! What was that, Donna?
Can we talk about the Irish folk over at the Fox News Channel?
Let's talk about Sean Hannity.
All right. Yes. Sean, actually, really is a great guy, and I did have the pleasure of working with him for a number of years. I love him to death. Okay. So he's on. Stop. God, he's so bad.
That was a church house creeper, baby.
There's a joke in there which I will not say on the air. Confucius say.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Moving right along. Sean Hannity.
He's on.
Oh!
He's on.
Here we go, ladies and gentlemen. You only got 12 minutes and 55 seconds left. I'm going to see how much I can disturb Donna and distract her.
Try not to have a glass of wine before we do these headlines.
Go ahead, Donna.
It still
Back
doesn't
to you.
work.
Shoot, Donna.
Okay, so
Oh, that one sounded wet.
He goes into an interview with Ted Koppel, okay, with a predetermined idea of where he wanted to go.
Is Ted Koppel still alive?
Yeah. Ted Koppel, I think, is just a head, like, with no shoulders. It's just he's there.
He looks like, you know who he looks like? The
Chris
guy
Wallace
on
is
South
very
Park.
similar.
He looks like the guy on South Park. Okay. All right, what's it, Mr. Hand?
Mr. Mackey or whatever his
Mr.
name
Mackey.
is. I don't know what his name
Ted
is.
Koppel.
Okay.
Doesn't he look like him, though, Donna?
Yeah, he does.
Oh, that one slipped out.
Stop.
Back to you, Donna.
All right. Rush Limbaugh was talking about this today, okay? Ted Koppel and Rush Limbaugh have a pretty long history, and they kind of... there was something that Rush went on the air and said, like, about 25 years ago when he was interviewing with Ted Koppel, and then I guess Ted Koppel had somebody else on later on, and he knew that whatever this person said, he was a lefty, against Rush Limbaugh was wrong, but Koppel never corrected him on the air. So he calls up Rush the next day and says, hey, I know this guy was wrong and I didn't correct him on the air, but that's just between you and me, okay? And Rush goes, well, no.
I was going to say, no, that's not okay.
So Rush goes on the air and he tells the story, and Koppel didn't speak with them for about 25 years. So like last week, Koppel calls him up again and says, hey, do you want to come on? And Rush is like, no, I'm not going to come on. So Hannity goes on Koppel. Hannity was talking today on his show that Ted Koppel, this is, went into the interview with a predetermined idea of where he wanted to go with this interview with Sean Hannity. This is exactly what I've talked about on the air for years. I stopped doing general assignment reporting for News Channel 4, which is NBC in New York City. I also did the Today Show, Fox 5 in New York, because people would actually, first of all, the slogan was, if it bleeds, it leads, which I didn't think was really doing anybody any good. But I saw reporters leave with a truck, to go and record their piece and have their piece already written. And they would go and find man on the street interviews and coach these people as to what they wanted them to say, and then come back so they could have their piece done for Live at 5 or the 10 o'clock news. Do you know where your children are?
They didn't call that fake news back then.
No, it wasn't
did they?
Fake
that was the news.
then.
The news at 11.
But this is what I never knew. Hannity starts talking about Ben Rhodes, who was the national security guy or whatever. He was deep in the Obama administration.
He's big in the shadow government.
Right.
Too.
And I knew that Ben Rhodes' brother worked for CBS. His name is David Rhodes. What I didn't know is I worked with David Rhodes at Fox first. He worked at Fox for many, many years when I was there. I'm like, oh my God, I remember a David Rhodes, and it's him. His
so
brother
basically
is Ben
what
Rhodes.
You're telling us here is that which you and I have been talking about for years, which is that even Fox News Channel is infected by the left.
Exactly. But to their credit, when they worked there, they tried to hide it as best they could. But I can honestly tell you, every producer I worked with, I wouldn't let them get away with it, but I knew they were not just leftists, they were commie pinkos, with the exception of one, who, by the way, is still there, and he's phenomenal. But,
sorry, Donna.
What can I tell you? I mean,
black beans, ladies and gentlemen, black beans tonight for dinner.
I had producers at the Fox News Channel that were mad they didn't get invited to parties that Bill Clinton was at. Let's just put it that way. Okay? So
why were they
Ted
mad?
Koppel,
why were they mad?
Because they wanted to go to these parties and meet Bill Clinton.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is all by design. You see what I'm doing here? I interrupt there. In a moment, dear. See what I'm doing, ladies and gentlemen? This is between you and me. Now, see, her mic is down. She can't enter in on this. We've got about 8 minutes and 20 seconds left in this segment, and I'm going to see how many times I can distract her. Back to you, Donna.
Okay. Meanwhile, Ted Koppel now goes on the air in like a 50-minute interview with Hannity. He uses something like a minute and a half, if that, which is exactly what I'm talking about. So therefore, he can pick and choose little bits and pieces that he wants, and the way you can edit now, you can make it look like nothing's been edited.
See, what I do, ladies and gentlemen, is I edit the show so you actually think I know what I'm talking about all the time.
But this is what we're talking about. This really is fake news, ladies and gentlemen. Remember how all the networks, at one point, they had the fuel the side fuel tanks on the Ford truck that would explode. That was all fake. More fake news.
Fake news.
Ted Koppel actually goes on the air afterwards and says Sean Hannity is dangerous because he's attracted. I think he said this to Hannity's face, actually. He said Hannity is dangerous because he's attracted more people where ideology is more important than facts. Can you imagine?
When did he say this?
He said this to Sean Hannity.
When?
In this interview, this past Sunday morning TV.
I swear to you, I didn't even know Ted Koppel was still alive. How does a man that old hold up a head that big on a neck that small? Please help me out here, Donna. I'm telling you, he looks like, what's the guy's name?
Mr. Mackey.
Yeah, Mr. Mackey from South Park.
Okay. Well, all the South Park characters look like that.
Yeah, but Mr. Mackey really does.
I think it's Mackey. I hope that's his name.
Well, the bottom line is that's what Mr. Koppel looks like.
That's true. But what planet is Ted Koppel on? Seriously, Sean Hannity is dangerous because he's attracted more people where ideology is more important than fact.
And what has that man, the guy on MSNBC, what's his name?
I don't know.
Rachel Madcow.
Oh, yeah, the guy.
Yeah, what does she do?
Oh, I know. Unbelievable.
I'm calling her she out of respect.
She's getting great ratings because of all the...
because so did Geraldo.
Yeah, that's true.
Hey, speaking of another mental midget.
No, stop.
What is wrong with his mustache?
It's getting thicker. He's turning into Salvador Dali, I think.
What it is. Yes. He's going to curl it up on the ends. It's uneven, though.
Another person I worked with.
Did he have was he in an accident or something where it won't grow?
You know what they used to do at Fox?
No.
They used to lean on Geraldo's Bentley because we'd go in at the same time. We worked
and take
weekends.
A picture of your car.
And my Camry, which I still have, by the way, with 309,000 miles. You hear that, Toyota? What a great car.
What a
Best car I
shameless
ever
plug
owned.
for Toyota.
It's true.
We'd like to welcome one of our new sponsors to the show, ladies and gentlemen, Toyota.
So we'd park with these press... We had press plates, which are wonderful, worth their weight in gold. You
can park any place, right?
Not really, no. They have designated zones. You used to be able to park any place, but you didn't get away with it anymore. So right across from Radio City and down a little ways, you could park. It's these press zones. So Geraldo and I would pull in together. He actually is too cheap to put his car in a lot. He owns a Bentley.
Maybe that's why he had a Bentley.
Yeah, I guess. So he's got a Bentley.
Because he could pinch the boogers out of George Washington's nose in a quarter.
With press plates, he has a Bentley. Can you believe this? So my car's parked in front of his car, and people are leaning on my car to get a better angle to take a picture of this Bentley with press plates because it's Geraldo's car. I'm like, get off my car.
Can I tell you a secret you don't know?
What?
There was one time when I had to fly up to New York for a business meeting and came over later to Fox to see you. Mm-hmm. And I did that. I leaned all over your car to get a picture of Geraldo's Bentley.
You too?
Yeah.
Thank God he didn't collapse my hood.
That was me.
Car is still running.
Donna!
Hear that, Toyota? That car is still running.
Black
I'm ignoring
beans
him.
for dinner, ladies and gentlemen.
Hey, you gotta love Representative Mel Brooks. Man, is he great. After making great movies like
Mel Brooks,
Blazing Saddles, Young Frankenstein, it's Mo Brooks. Sorry. The Alabama...
You lost me. I had no idea what you were talking about. I thought you were talking about who's the funny one up in Minnesota.
No, that's another one.
Al
Frankenstein. Okay. Anyhow, Mo Brooks, seriously, he's an Alabama congressman, has filed a bill in the U.S. House of Representatives to repeal Obamacare that's one sentence long. He has no co-sponsors. At least he's trying.
What is the sentence?
Basically said it's going to repeal Obamacare effective December 31st of this year. That's what it said.
See, that's what makes... Ladies and gentlemen, is there anybody other than me that's absolutely to the point of nauseous over what is going on in Washington, D.C.?
And Donald Trump,
I am so fed up with this crap.
Let me tell you something, sir. Donald Trump, I love you to death, but there is no way the Democrats will do anything to work with you. I know he's saying it. I really think Trump is brilliant this way. He's letting them hang themselves. He's letting Paul Ryan hang himself, thank God, and he's going to let the Democrats hang themselves.
And what's going to happen in 2020 when they put Oprah Winfrey up against him?
Yeah, that's true. But here's the problem. Everybody's calling it Obamacare light. So why didn't any of the Democrats vote for it? This is how stupid they are and how ideological both sides are. And you know what? I, for one, just hope they hang themselves. Jeff Sessions, The real attorney general, in my opinion, one who actually enforces laws, is cracking down on sanctuary cities.
Man, I hope
could
so.
lose billions. And you want to talk about Al Frankenstein? Yes. You want to
say
talk about
billions
absurdity?
like they do on Austin Powers.
Billions.
There you
want
go.
to talk about absurdity? It was Al Franken questioning Gorsuch in the confirmation.
That was disgraceful.
It was a joke.
If I gave a rat's you-know-what about Al Franken, I would have been embarrassed for him.
What's wrong with Minnesota? Seriously, Minnesota. And I know our listeners who are from Minnesota aren't going to be voting for Al Franken. But this is just, it's unbelievable, the stupidity of the left and how they get away with it. And every single thing the right does gets highlighted and magnified like it's so horrible.
That's because the mainstream media doesn't like us very much.
Well, let's just take this whole Russian thing. You've had 8 months. You know, with all the leaks going on, if they could leak any kind of conversation that Donald Trump is having, like with the Mexican president or Angela Merkel or anybody else. Angela Merkel, by the way, looks like she's on the way to becoming reelected. So
I guess Germany likes terrorism.
Anyhow, but they totally... What the heck was that?
That was me doing my drum roll after my comment.
Okay. They totally ignore the fact that the Clintons, or Hillary Clinton, took a $145 million donation. Her husband got all kinds of hundreds of thousands of dollars for, speeches that are 2 minutes long. And Podesta gets millions from a Russian corporation. That's all hearsay. Nothing.
Didn't I hear you mention earlier tonight that Chelsea
curtain.
Clinton was doing something with Russians too?
Chelsea, I know, is very nervous.
Why did you go
because we're not sure about that, so I don't want to say anything yet.
Okay.
It seems
fake
like
news,
Chelsea,
ladies and gentlemen. At this point, that is not vetted, and we are going to retract it.
Well, I can tell you one thing, that Chelsea Clinton is pretty damn nervous. If they go after her mother, they're going to go after her too.
You know what I just did?
You tried to play the tape backwards?
Yeah, I just retracted that comment.
And it should say, "Turn me on, dead man. Paul is dead."
Paul is dead. Hey, Paulie. I wonder if
you're a Beatle fan, you knew exactly what I was talking about.
I'm not old enough to have known that, but I can tell you this, ladies and gentlemen.
You're way too young.
Donna and I have tried to watch Beatles movies, and I can't understand what the hell they're saying.
See, I can, because I love the Beatles.
All right, who we got coming up, Donna? We got to go to break.
We are going to be talking about lessgovernment.org, which we certainly need, and that would be one seat in Motley. And then at the top of the hour, man, am I looking forward to this, David Horowitz, best-selling author, his latest big agenda.
What's
President
up, honky?
Trump's plan. No, that was Hating Whitey.
Hating Whitey. I knew it had something to do like that.
President Trump's plan to save America. Again, it's a New York Times bestseller. We'll be talking to David Horowitz for an entire hour coming up next on Cowboy Logic Radio.
Cowboys didn't dance, didn't wear designer shirts. Their hearts were filled with memories, their bodies filled with hurt. They would sit around the campfire and exchange a piercing glance. Back when the West was really wild, cowboys didn't dance, yes. When cowboys didn't dance, didn't wear designer shirts. When their hearts were filled with memories, their bodies filled with hurt. They would sit around the campfire and exchange a piercing glance, yes. Back when the West was really wild, cowboys didn't dance.
Check us out on the web at cowboylogic.us.
Hi, thank you for listening. My name is Ron Phillips, and I'm the owner and operations manager of Talk America Radio. It is with great pride that I offer you these two 24/7 streams of some of the finest talk radio programming in the country, but I need your support. Talk America Radio is a listener-supported network. That means we need your help to continue to offer the quality programming you're hearing right now. Please visit talkamericaradio.us and click the Support Us button. You can contribute monthly or send us a one-time amount. We'll put it to good use continuing to share the American voice. Thank you.
Hey folks, this is AJ Gaynor, host of Blow and Smoke on the Talk America Radio Network. We know the mainstream media has a narrative they're pushing. On my show, Blow and Smoke, we challenge that narrative, sometimes with simple facts, other times with instinctive logic, but always with truthful, honest debate. I believe the perspective I provide my listeners is indeed unique. Tune in to Blow and Smoke with yours truly, AJ Gaynor, on the Talk America Radio Network and at talkamericaradio.us.
Hi, I'm Ward Cleaver.
And I'm June Cleaver.
From Leave It to Beaver. And you're listening to Talk America Radio.
Ward, aren't you a little tough on the beaver?
No, we can't say that. Do it again.
She said it on the show. She said it on the show. That's where it came from. It was 30 years ago.
All right, let's try it again. Hi, I'm Ward Cleaver.
And I'm June Cleaver.
Try it again. Don't laugh. Okay, game face.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Ward Cleaver.
And I'm June Cleaver.
From the hit show Leave It to Beaver. And you're listening to Talk America Radio.
Ward, don't you think you're being a little hard on the beaver?
Chris X Radio, weekday mornings at 10 Eastern, on the Talk America Radio Network.
Congressman Alan West joining us.
Well, thanks so much, Chris.
We're talking with Brigitte Gabrielle.
Oh, Chris, I am delighted to be with you.
Ted Nugent is here.
My pleasure, and congratulations with your show. I'm proud to be on it with you, Chris.
Listen to Chris X Radio, weekday mornings at 10 Eastern, right here on the Talk America Radio Network.
This is Don Neuen, co-host of the Drive Time Sit Rep. Join me as I call in to my Intel analyst, Denise Simon, for my daily situation report, or Sit Rep, the Drive Time Sit Rep. Check talkamericaradio.us for more information and show times.
You're listening to your local news source, WLBB, News Talk 1330 and FM 106.3.
Hey, everybody, they're back on again.
Cowboys didn't dance, didn't wear designer shirts, when their hearts were filled with memories, their bodies filled with hurt. They would sit around the campfire and exchange a piercing glare. Back when the West was really wild, cowboys didn't dance.
Welcome back to Cowboy Logic Radio. I'm Donna Fiducia, along with Don Neuen. And our very special guest this half hour is somebody I love having on, because I must say that our own Denise Simon turned me on to Seton Motley, and he is just one of the best guests when it comes to just lambasting everything involving the government, because that's what we love to do here on Cowboy Logic Radio, because Seton Motley, the government, is just getting way, way too big. And your group is called Less Government, and you can find him at lessgovernment.org, and you can also find Seton at Seton Motley, SETON MOTLEY. That's at Seton Motley on Twitter. And Seton Motley, welcome back to Cowboy Logic Radio.
My pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.
All right, let's start. We were talking just before we started the interview with all the insanity going on. Where do you start with this government? So it's a little late, but I think George Orwell, 1984, Big Brother's watching, is here. I guess Donald Trump kind of was right. It's not technically wiretapping, but I don't know. It is to me in my book.
Well, you know, any intellectually honest person would have to look at what Nunez announced yesterday and say Trump was right. I mean, there's no way around it. I mean, if you want to hold him, it's amazing how much nuance and subtlety they expect out of Donald Trump in 140 characters. Mm-hmm. It's really hysterical. I mean, you can't get nuanced on Twitter. It's 140 characters. But the spirit of what he said in that now famous, notorious, infamous tweet was proven 100% accurate. by what Devin Nunes found yesterday, or announced yesterday. I don't know what he found.
Incidental surveillance. Incidental surveillance.
Yeah, but,
what the heck is that?
But and the stupid thing was the day after the tweet, or that night, Mark Levin, the radio host and constitutional scholar lawyer, was on Fox News with all of the newspaper stories.
Yep.
That said that Trump was under surveillance and wiretap. The New York Times used the word wiretap on January 20th on the top of the front page.
How about Michael Flynn? They had Flynn's actual wording. They knew exactly what Donald Trump said to the Mexican president. So if he's not being wiretapped, how the hell do they know?
Right. And as I said when the article came out on Nunes, I said, proving once again that you cannot simultaneously be under investigation and not be under investigation.
Exactly.
You can't say he's being investigated for connections to the Russians, and then when he points out, oh, I'm being surveilled, I'm being wiretapped. No, you're not. Wait a minute, you just spent the last 6 months saying he's under surveillance. What are you talking about?
Exactly. So get a load of this. But you know what, Seton, is that the Democrats harped, like you say, all over Trump's one word, one little tweet, wiretapping, and they say it's not a fact and blah, 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 even though, as we saw, that Nunes came out and pretty much said that is the case. Well, and you mentioned on Fox News, Tucker Carlson also said they called 30 politicians after Nunes came out with that press conference who had criticized Trump, and none chose to come on and talk about it, to comment. Not one.
They had to get their own Fox News contributor to come on and defend the Democrats' position, because no Democrat would do it.
I know. And then you put on CNN and you wonder, what are they watching the same story? I think they had Woodward or Bernstein, one of the two who did all the Watergate stuff, actually say there's no story here. Are you kidding me? It's just unbelievable.
I subject myself to MSNBC's Morning Joe every morning.
Are you a masochist?
There's only two people I'm aware. Well, there's only two people of whom I'm aware that have actually blocked me on Twitter. One of them is Joe Scarborough, and the other was Chuck Todd. Chuck Todd has also blocked me on Twitter. But they're on there saying that this actually makes it worse for Trump.
Oh, okay. How do they figure that one out?
And I'm like, how? I'm listening to them for an hour and a half, and they keep saying it makes it worse for Trump, but I never actually heard them give any logical or any reason, logical or illogical, as to why or how it made it worse.
This is how they skew the news. It's all the fake news that's fit to print, in my opinion. When Rachel Madcow came out and had, here it is, pinch me because it's true, this is Donald Trump's tax return, and it's from 2005, which showed that he paid more taxes than CNBC and CBS and Barack Obama and everything. But you know what's so funny about that, Seton? They said, well, he released it, really, and it's 2005 because that was the year he married Melania, and he wanted to impress her with how much money he had.
I'm surprised they can broadcast in the tinfoil hat. Look, it's hard for me to imagine. Look, Trump trolling them by releasing those 2 pages of tax returns actually makes some viable sense, because nobody, the only people that have access to his tax returns, and I'm not being a conspiracy theorist, I'm just playing their theory out. Nobody has access to his tax returns that doesn't like him except for Trump himself. Mm-hmm. So if the IRS was going to release his tax returns, they wouldn't release those 2 pages.
Exactly.
They'd release just about any, I would imagine, just about any other 2 pages you could pull at random out of the last 15 years of tax returns would be more damaging to Trump than those 2.
I really think Trump is brilliant, because he seems to just do just enough to tweak. He uses the media to his advantage really pretty well, I think. And he really has yet to be wrong.
I think he's playing chess with a bunch of people who are playing checkers.
Exactly.
And he's making them look foolish over and over and over again. And, the average person who's voted for Trump and who's still at all tuning in to MSNBC, ABC, CBS, the 3 networks, by the way, the first 2 nights after the 14-year-old gets raped in Rockville, dedicate 0 minutes and 0 seconds.
I was going to bring that up later. Yeah, but it's unbelievable.
But anybody who voted for Trump or was even remotely interested in what Trump had to say and watches the news for 3 weeks and watches them go apoplectic over this one tweet, and then hears that Nunes comes out and says this, is got to go. They're adding to Trump's vote tally with every one of these stories in 2020. They're adding to his vote tally because they look colossally stupid now. And now they're trying to say Nunes should have gone to Schiff, the ranking Democrat, first before Trump. No. This is an intelligence breach of major proportions. The first person he's got to tell is the guy in the chief executive, the guy in charge of the intelligence community, and say, by the way, there's some seriously nefarious garbage going on, and you need to get a handle on it. Right, before I go to my opposing my mirror on the Democrat minority side and hold his hand and let him know, he's got to go to the guy who runs the intelligence community and say, you've got issues in the intelligence community, and we just found some more of them. Yep. So I think this whole thing of him going to Trump first was colossally absurd.
Exactly. We're talking with Seton Motley. Find him at lessgovernment.org, and that pretty much sums it all up. We love the fact that we can use less government because obviously it's really over the top. Speaking of which, well, okay, Paul Ryan Care, and his reluctance to not cut illegal immigrants out of Ryan Care, which some are saying could be moved around. But here's the problem. First of all, I have horses, Seton, and I said if Paul Ryan, and John Boehner for that matter, were a horse, I never would buy them because of their eye. They have that really...
You shoot them.
Yeah, exactly. They shoot horses, don't they? So...
Blue.
We
should start calling them all Elmers.
Yeah. His refusal to really deal with the essential problems of Obamacare and hide it so that everybody can't see it, which to me is no better than what happened with Obamacare. And he's just not working with anybody. And go ahead.
I have a friend. He's been a friend for 15 years. He's been a congressman for 7. I'm not going to say who it is because I just narrowed it down. He's a guy. But I've known him for a long time. I've known him as a civilian way before he ran for office. And he was part of the 2010 wave, and he's still there. And I just texted him as soon as they announced that they weren't going to have the vote this evening. Mm-hmm. I texted him because I was on the radio with him on Monday. And I said, this isn't going to pass. And he said, well, you underestimated Trump. I said, I called Trump victory on his announcement day. Don't tell me I underestimated Trump. I didn't. And so I said, it's not going to pass. And it just occurred to me. I tweeted him. I texted him, and I said, nobody ran on a 3-stage rocket Obamacare light plan. Everybody for 7 years ran on repeal.
Mm-hmm.
So when you run on X, which would be a 2-page bill for 10 years almost, and then you get all the victories you say you need to do X, and then out of the chute, it takes you 2 months to write the bill you should have had written 6.5 years ago.
Exactly.
And the bill looks nothing like what you ran on. It looks nothing like X. It's Y, Z, A, and B, and it's thousands of pages, and it has nothing to do with the repeal you promised. You're not going to get support for it because nobody ran on a 3-stage rocket from NASA. Forget the fact that it's Obamacare light. An electrician who never voted in his life in Hoboken, New Jersey, knows that these 3 things are not going to pass Congress.
Oh,
they know this.
Mm-hmm. Well,
no, I'm just saying.
Tom Price is from Georgia. I know a few people from Georgia here that know Tom Price, and I was happy that he got in, but I know a lot of people who are not real thrilled with him, and they say he'll say and do anything to get ahead, and I hope that's not the case. But this bill should not be voted on, and I'm glad Trump is finally showing that he is going to actually deal with the other side. Paul Ryan is not his friend. That's all he needs to know.
No.
Exactly.
No. Paul Ryan was working on an amnesty bill with the worst member in Congress on the issue, Luis Gutierrez, in 2015.
Mm-hmm.
in 2015, and he had the votes. He had the Republican votes in Congress to pass it. And then the second wave of illegal alien children came through the southern border, and the Republicans ran for the tall grass. He lost the votes, and the bill never came to the floor. But he was working on it in 2015. So you're telling me Trump, who won on that issue, that Ryan's your friend? I don't think so.
Yeah, Trump's not stupid. What do you think's going to happen then going forward?
A friend of real quick. A friend of mine. Well, not a friend of mine. He's a guy who works at a libertarian think tank. He's an open borders freak. And he said, "Oh my!" He posted that Wall Street Journal editorial that said Trump was in trouble. And he said, "Oh, when a Republican president's lost a Wall Street Journal 2 months in, he's in real trouble." I said, "The Wall Street Journal,
it's a Wall Street Journal.
They never would have liked Trump. He won on anti-amnesty. Of course, the Wall Street Journal doesn't like him. What are you talking about?" So yeah.
No print media likes him. So what do you think? And no media likes him. I mean, I really think he uses Twitter magnificently. So what do you think going forward is going to be the case? I actually have newfound appreciation for Rand Paul, quite frankly.
Mm-hmm. He's been great throughout this. He was the first one, if I'm recalling properly, he was the first one out of the gate saying the Ryan bill was a sham. If I'm not mistaken, it was him. He was first. Because Cruz was kind of silent on this. I mean, he was probably going to vote no, but he wasn't out in front on this. It was Rand Paul. And yeah, I agree with you. And he has a much better bill. I don't understand why a full repeal. By the way, when they voted to repeal it, I don't know, a half dozen times more when Obama was president, there was no mention of replace along with it. It was repeal and repeal. They never said, "Oh, we have to replace it too." I don't understand. They passed a repeal bill in October of last year, unanimously. Republicans and Democrats both voted for it. Pass that again, and then put Democrats on the hook and say, "Do you want to have a say in what comes next or not?"
Well, the thing is, down the line, it's to backload something that the next HHS secretary, if he's a Democrat, could just do a 180 on again. I mean, this is so stupid for them to even consider this. Well, and again, it's Paul Ryan, in my opinion. Go ahead.
It's too much DC. It's too much government. It's too much DC. And like you said, when you put that much power in Washington in bureaucrats' hands, it's not going to always be in a Trump administration's hands. It's going to be in George Bush's hands, for God's sake. Let alone Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders or anything like that. I mean, George Bush was awful on government size of government, scope and sphere of influence of government. The stupid faith-based initiative, for God's sake. Medicare Part D, for God's sake. So yeah, it's the point of this is to get as much as possible out of D.C. Trump ran on everybody in D.C. is a moron. Get it the hell out of here. So why is he backing this bill? It's totally, he's down to 37% popularity. You know why? Because he's been backing this bill. He's been flogging this bill, which has nothing to do with what got him elected.
So at least if it doesn't go for a vote, he's showing that he's willing to work with the conservative caucus and everybody else. He's got to wake up and do what he said he's going to do, which I think he's strong enough to do the right thing. I'll be honest with you.
Well, look, the American people were with him until he did this.
Yep.
If he goes back to where he's supposed to be on this, the American people will be with him again. Nobody ran on this 3-stage nonsense. Nobody ran on keeping illegal immigrants on government medicine. Nobody ran on all of these stupid things. Look, I'm a single guy with maternity coverage and pap smear coverage. Mandatory.
No, my husband said the same thing. Don's going, "You got to be kidding me." And menopausal women need maternity coverage. And and drug cessation and smoking cessation. If you don't drink, you don't smoke, you have a responsible lifestyle, you got to pay for somebody else that you don't even know that just crossed the border illegally. That's what it comes down to.
Right. And I don't smoke, I don't drink, and and by the way, all that maternity stuff was, of course, they stupidly said it was sexist that women paid more than men for health insurance. Of course they do. They use more services. This is not rocket science, you clowns. So they make people like, to even it out, they make people like me pay for maternity coverage. Thanks.
No, you're paying for the illegals too. You're paying twice as much or 3 times as much.
No, don't get me wrong. No. The 20 million plus that are here, it's not 11, it's not 12, it's 20 or more million people that are here. They don't have insurance. The average education of the average Mexican is the completion of 6th grade. And for Central and South America, that's high. So this is what I ask all the amnesty freaks and the open borders freaks. If someone who's born and raised in America doesn't finish elementary school, are they going to be a government money recipient their entire life? And the answer is yes.
Well, that brings me to my next question. That brings me to my next question and my next topic, and that is illegal aliens and how, even though they are a smaller part of the population, problems that we have in illegal aliens that we can't vet. Because you've got, like you said, a 6th grade or 7th grade education on average. So you've got an 18-year-old down there in Rockville, Maryland, going to school with a 14-year-old that he rapes. Now, what is an 18-year-old doing in a school with a 13 or a 14-year-old? Because that's where they place them.
In PG County schools, or Montgomery County schools, which is where the school is in Montgomery County, Maryland, 19 different languages are spoken. It's the Tower of Babel. Now, anyone who hears that and doesn't think that's demonstrably bad for the education of, I don't know, the actual tax-paying citizens of Rockville, Maryland and Montgomery County is a friggin' moron.
Yep.
Because of course it is. It's the Tower of Babel in high school. It's impossible to educate under those circumstances. It's impossible.
Whatever happened to common sense? And then you've got London's mayor after what happened there outside the Parliament building. I know he's a Muslim, and he says, well, it's all part of living in a big city now. No, it's not. It's all part of living in Afghanistan, maybe, but not here in the United States or in a Western civilized country. But that is the problem.
In a first world country.
Exactly.
Yes. It's very common in a third world country, which is what we're importing. It is not common in a first world country. The rape capital of Europe is Sweden. And it's because they've been importing the third world for the last 30 years. You can't. Globalism is socialism, is cultural socialism. You can't combine a third world and a destitute third world culture and a prominent first world culture and not damage the first world culture. It's impossible. You cannot. The first world culture does not escape unscathed. To make a multicultural omelet, you have to break some eggs. And unfortunately, one of the eggs is a 14-year-old girl in Rockville, Maryland.
Yeah, it really is tragic. All right, Seton Motley from lessgovernment.org. Tell us, we've got a couple minutes left. What's first and foremost on your mind lately as far as getting rid of government, besides maybe Ryan Care?
Besides Ryan Care. Well, one of the things that I think, and we talked about this just before we went on the air, because you own a bunch of land, and I write about this all the time, is the WOTUS rule, the Waters of the U.S., which was completely, speaking of giving bureaucrats too much power, what the EPA under Obama said was, if water collected on your property after a rainstorm, that was a navigable waterway, and they can regulate your property. Now, for you, it's a pain in the keister because you've got 62 acres, and it's a pain. But if you're a farmer or a rancher, and the government comes in and says that puddle means you can't plant and you can't till your fields, well, that's problematic. And so one of the annoyances for me is that brazen level of stupidity at the EPA, and Trump campaigned against the abuse of the waters of the U.S. So I think, and Pruitt, God knows, hates it. He spent 6 years suing it. So I'm hopeful that that's one thing at least that will be dramatically the stupidity level will be dramatically reduced.
Absolutely. When it rains, my horses can step over that navigable waterway. So I guess a cockroach might be able to navigate it, but that's about it. Hey, how about?
Well, as we said, if the Geico Gecko's voting in it, it's not a problem.
That's pretty much it. Well, I'm really agreeing with this budget that Trump is putting up. Get rid of. Why do we have to subsidize all these things like PBS?
Well, especially in the age of cable. To me, one of the quintessential examples, in the age of cable television and Netflix and Hulu and all of these services, why do we have a government media system? Why do we have a government television station and a government radio station? What are you talking about? This is unbelievable. And I'll paraphrase Neil Bortz, who was a radio host for a long time in the Southeast.
We've had him on the show. He's a good friend of ours.
Good. Well, yeah, he's in Georgia, right? He's in Atlanta.
Actually, he's in he's in Florida.
Oh, he moved to Florida. Okay,
he's in Naples, Florida.
But he said if you go to he's 20 minutes from me. He said if you go to a Catholic school, you get a pro-Catholic education. You go to an Episcopalian school, you get a pro-Episcopalian. If you go to a government school, you get a pro-government education. And the same thing's true with government media. How are conservatives faring on NPR and PBS? Not particularly well is the answer to that question.
No, and the thing is, when I went to school, when you were a journalist, your personal opinion didn't matter. You gave both sides. And now, I sound like my mother, these kids today, actually, when they come out of journalism school, feel it's...
I think you came up... I think... I'm sorry, my dog, the guy that cuts my palm trees is here.
Oh, excuse me.
so the dog's freaking out. He's going to build a wall on my seawall to keep it from.
There you go. Build a wall there, Seton Motley. Go ahead. We got about a minute.
Yes. But no. Look. Journalism used to never be considered nonpartisan. The old school papers are called like the Arkansas Democrat Gazette because it was the Democrat House, organ.
But they gave both sides of the story a lot better than they do now. Now they feel like they have to mold your opinion.
I think nonpartisan journalism was made up by the left to advance leftism while pretending not to advance leftism.
Yeah,
that's what I think.
That's pretty much it.
So I like partisan journalism because at least it's honest and you know what you're getting. I mean, no one knew Walter Cronkite was a communist, and he single-handedly turned the tide of the Vietnam War by lying about the Tet Offensive, remember?
Yeah, that's true.
So, but nobody knew that because he was the most trusted man in America, and he went on the air and said we lost the Tet Offensive, and we didn't. We won. So I like the fact that there's a Daily Caller versus a Daily Kos, because that way at least you know what you're getting when you go to a website.
Well, I actually think that Donald Trump would not have won if it weren't for alternative media, and that's something for another segment. Seton Motley, thank you so much for joining us. It's always so much fun. Go trim your palm trees there down in the Florida area, not far from Neil Bortz. Lessgovernment.org is where
I'll hopefully find him.
You will. Look for the big bus because we service it. Look for the big old Prevost bus, the 45-foot long bus, and you'll find Neil Bortz. Lessgovernment.org or at Seton Motley on Twitter, SETON MOTLEY. Seton Motley, thank you so much for joining us here on Cowboy Logic Radio. When we come back, we're going to be talking to David Horowitz. So looking forward to that. One of my favorite authors. It's coming up next on Cowboy Logic Radio.
Cowboys didn't dance, didn't wear designer shirts. Their hearts were filled with memories, their bodies filled with hurt. They would sit around the campfire and exchange a piercing glance. Back when the West was really wild, cowboys didn't dance, yes. When cowboys didn't dance, didn't wear designer shirts. When their hearts were filled with memories, their bodies filled with hurt. They would sit around the campfire and exchange a piercing glance, yes. Back when the West was really wild, cowboys didn't dance.
Check us out on the web at cowboylogic.us.
Hello, everyone. I'm Donna Fiducia.
And I'm Don Neuen. And this is Cowboy Logic Radio.
Cowboys didn't dance, didn't wear designer shirts. When their hearts were filled with memories, their bodies filled with hurt. They would sit around the campfire and exchange a piercing glares. Back when the West was really wild, cowboys didn't dance.
Welcome back to Cowboy Logic Radio. I'm Donna Fiducia, along with Don Neuen. And our very special guest right now is somebody that I have looked forward to interviewing for years. And I don't believe I ever got a chance to talk to David Horowitz in all the years I was at the Fox News Channel and in the media in New York. So I get my chance to do it right now. David Horowitz, you are the founder and president of the David Horowitz Freedom Center. Our good friend Michael Cutler contributes to that, and editor of Front Page Magazine. Your books, starting way back in 97, Radical Son, had a huge impact on me. 2013, Black Skin Privilege and the American Dream. 2016, your book, Progressive Racism. And, of course, now your new book, Big Agenda. David Horowitz, thank you so much for joining us here on Cowboy Logic Radio.
Well, thank you.
I got to start right off the bat. You grew up, and I should give everybody your background. You're educated back in the late 50s, early 60s in Berkeley and Columbia. It just doesn't get any more radical than that. And I, David Horowitz, feel that I sort of grew up as the East Coast version. My brother especially, he's your age. My brother ran with a campus radical here at Columbia and people of that nature. And it got to the point, I mean, when I was growing up, and I guess you were the same way, you were a leftist, that was it, and that's just the way it was. And then all of a sudden, you do this 180 or this common sense, and hence your book, which was a huge impression on me back in 1997, and that is Radical Son. Can you talk a little bit about your beginnings and how that all got started?
Sure. I was raised by card-carrying communists who were actually, as all communists, and of course they called themselves progressives, and my mother was a registered Democrat. A part of a vast international conspiracy orchestrated from Moscow. And they wanted America to lose the Cold War. I went to Berkeley as a graduate student in 1959 and was one of the founders of the New Left. And then I became the editor of Ramparts, the leading magazine of the left, and a Hollywood producer, the producer Easy Rider, wanted me to meet Huey Newton, the head of the Black Panther Party. And I raised a lot of money for the Panthers to buy a church, which I turned into a school in East Oakland. And I recruited my bookkeeper at Ramparts to do the books of the school. And in 1974, December, she disappeared. And by the time the police fished her body out of San Francisco Bay, I knew the Panthers had murdered her. And the rest of the left, all my friends, were supporting them, despite denying the murder. But I wrote about that in Radical Son. And then her body was discovered in February. In April, the South Vietnamese government fell because the Democrats, the Watergate Democrats, cut off all funding to the South Vietnamese, and the left was successful. And that's all the people who run the Democratic Party now were successful in cutting off aid to the South Vietnamese. And the communists then proceeded to slaughter 2.5 million Indo-Chinese peasants, and there wasn't a single protest. So I knew the anti-war movement was what it always was an anti-American movement. It had nothing to do with the war. It had nothing to do with supporting the Vietnamese. It was the hatred for America that all progressives share. And that was the end of my career in the left.
Well, your book, Radical Son, back in 1997, woke me up. My brother ran with Mark Rudd, who was a big campus radical on the East Coast in the New York area. I believe he went to Columbia. My brother shimmied up the pole at my high school and ripped down the American flag in the 60s. He was kicked out of public school, which is hard to do back then. Yeah, I know, exactly.
That should have happened more often.
Yeah, I know, that's true. And my parents had to spend all kinds of money putting him, believe it or not, through a Catholic school to get him out of high school. And he was, a lot older than I was, and I graduated the same year as him from college. But that's another story. But this is what I grew up in as well, David Horowitz. The fact that my parents were union people, they were educators. My father actually was an architect, but my mother worked in the Newark public school system as a social worker for almost 30 years. And you were a Democrat. That was it. You voted Democrat no matter what.
Yeah.
And so what happened is I don't know, I guess maybe the old saying, was it Winston Churchill that said, if you're a conservative in your 20s, you have no heart. If you're liberal in your 40s, you have no brain? I don't know. But I grew up in rock and roll. That was my career. I started in rock and roll radio. You absolutely had to be a leftist for that. And then I started thinking, man, this just makes no sense. And then and your book, Radical Son, back in 1997, really is what turned me around. Here's my question. Public school education. You go to Catholic school. Neil Bortz always said this. You go to Catholic school, you get a Catholic education. You go to a Hebrew school, you get a Jewish education. You go to public school, you get a government education. And this has been going on for a good 100 years. How do we undo this brainwashing at this point? Because now it's entrenched in the Democrat Party.
Actually, it's changed over the last 30 or 40 years. Yes, you get indoctrinated in left-wing claptrap, and anti-Americanism is what you get in public schools. I actually have devised a code of ethics for K-12 teachers, which would forbid them from advocating on any side of a controversial issue, the penalty being probation, suspension, and losing your teaching license. So if there's a state of Georgia or any other state that might want to sponsor such legislation, have them get in touch with me.
We're actually going to be interviewing a couple of congressional candidates for Tom Price's seat. Maybe we should bring that up to him. That's kind of interesting. The Code of Ethics.
Well,
K-12,
what you want is a state. Mm-hmm. No, you don't want a congressman. You want a state legislator, somebody on the appropriations.
It's got to start in the state
education committee.
May I jump in here and ask
we'll let you.
A question? And you got to understand that most of the time, I'm a lot more active in an interview here. But first of all, I want to listen to you, sir, more than I want to speak. The second thing is that this interview has meant so much to Donna that I really want to stay on the sidelines. But there are going to be times that I would like to chime in. This is one of them. My parents were both career educators. I graduated high school a little later than both of the two of you. I graduated in 1979. When I had the privilege of voting, I started voting Republican, and I have never turned back because I feel I was raised by two educators that were in public education and college education their entire careers, but I was raised with conservative values. And so a lot of what I'm listening to here that Mr. Horowitz went through, Donna, what you went through, what the acts that your brother committed, to me, that boils my blood. And help me understand.
It should.
Well, thank you.
Here's the problem with conservatives. Here's the problem with Republicans. They don't fight.
You're right.
And
they're not fighting now.
They're intimidated. They don't want to be called names, so they get out of the way. And that's why Trump, I written this book, Big Agenda, President Trump's plan to save America, but that's so successful because he is willing to fight. And once you're willing to fight, you start winning.
You can't win if you don't fight.
But
and the thing is,
I know, but For me, it's always been when I see a Republican squaring off with a Democrat, it looks like Godzilla versus Bambi. Because the Democrats are calling the Republican racist, sexist, homophobe, xenophobe, and the Republicans are calling the Democrats liberals.
Yep.
They're not liberals, they're bigots. They're anti-American bigots. That's what the Democratic Party is today. It's the party of Bernie Sanders, a lifelong supporter of communist causes, who chose to have his honeymoon in Moscow at the height of the Cold War. He would have been the nominee of the party if the crooked Clintons hadn't fixed the primaries with the help of Donna Brazile and Debbie Wasserman Schultz. That is the Democratic Party, a left wing. You could call it socialist, but I don't see anything in its programs or its attitudes different from what my parents, who were card-carrying communists, believed back when.
You know, I have a hard time trying to find an example in a society throughout history where socialism proved to be beneficial and long-standing success for the populace.
Socialism is the gulag. The reason they kill so many people is because socialism is not based on a human reality, and therefore you have to jail people who don't go along with the program.
Precisely.
It's the end, and for the life of me, I can't understand Republicans are fighting things like Obamacare for what they are. They're an assault on individual freedom. What the left wants, what the Democratic Party wants, is to judge everybody by their skin color, by their sexual orientation, or their gender. That is so un-American, so anti-American, so racist. But Republicans just don't have the language of battle, do they?
No, they shrink down.
They don't have the balls.
They really don't. They shrink down, and thank God. And we liked Ted Cruz initially, but I always thought there's no way Ted Cruz is going to stand up to the onslaught of the left, the media, which is really just now an extension, an appendage of the left-wing agenda. And the thing is, the left, like you say, they yell fascist, racist, blah, blah, blah. You're Islamophobic, you're homophobic. They're watermelons. They're green on the outside. They're red on the inside. And isn't that really how things got started? The Russians figured that the environmentalist movement was a way to get in because everybody wants clean water and clean air. But now it's just morphed into something so much more really hideous as far as an assault on our freedoms.
I'm not sure the Russians had anything to do with it. It's logical for Marxists to become radical environmentalists because it's apocalyptic. You're saving the planet. Well, if you're saving the planet, that justifies any government controls of anything. And that's what all their agendas are. More government intrusion, more government control, less individual freedom.
Tell us a little bit about your book, Big Agenda, and President Trump's plan really to save America. What is the major premise of it? And I'd like to get into this more as we continue the interview.
Well, the major premise, the book is Big Agenda is about, first of all, who the enemy is. You know, conservatives understand that if you don't identify radical Islamic extremism or whatever, terrorism, as the enemy, and you pretend that it has nothing to do with Islam, you can't fight it. But they don't apply the same vision to the domestic war. Democrats, they're socialists. They believe that they can change the world, and if you don't agree with them, they're going to force you to do it. So they want a lot of power. So the first part of the book is called The Adversary, and really the adversary's agenda. And then it's how to fight them. And why Trump is, I give you an example. Trump, let me give you two. There was a seminal moment in the second debate when Trump turned to the cameras and said, you have to understand Hillary has tremendous hatred in her heart. And what he was referring to was her basket of deplorables, which she named the racist, sexist, homophobes. But of course, that's what every Democrat, every time anybody who's listening to my voice now who's in an argument with a so-called liberal over policy, they will be called and have been called a racist, sexist, and Islamophobe. The Democratic Party is a party of hate, and until you understand that, you can't fight them. Normally, a president gets 7 months, according to Gallup, of a honeymoon, where, we have divisive campaigns. Campaigns are always divisive, but we're all supposed to be part of one community, America, based on a constitution. And so we have this ritual of an incoming president gets a honeymoon, gets to put his team in place, get his team confirmed, gets to start his agenda, then you resume the criticism. The Democrats didn't give Trump 7 seconds of a honeymoon. He didn't get confirmation hearings. He got a witch hunt. Jeff Sessions, one of the most decent human beings in the United States Senate, a champion of civil rights, who, as the Attorney General of a Deep South state, Alabama, desegregated the schools and prosecuted the Ku Klux Klan, and yet Schumer and that witch from Massachusetts, Warren, called him a racist, and Blumenthal from Connecticut. And there wasn't one Democrat. Now, one of his colleagues over 20 years defended him. That's who the Democratic Party is. They have declared war on Trump. When they say resistance is what they're going to do, what is resistance? It's what partisans do to defeat a Nazi occupation. It's not a proper role for a Democratic opposition. They're saboteurs. Until Republicans wake up to the fact that Democrats have declared war on them and on this country, it's going to be very hard to win these battles. Trump understands this instinctively. So do Steve Bannon and Steve Miller. And they're our really only hope, in my view.
Boy, I tell you, I think Steve Miller is a superstar, in my opinion.
Here's what really got me. You want to talk about absurdity. And that was Al Franken questioning Neil Gorsuch in the confirmation hearings for Supreme Court. I mean, for Al Franken, he goes, well, I made a living in absurdity. Yeah, you're right. And your questioning is a huge line of absurdity. And then you have, like you say, it's totally partisan. They're not giving an inch. All they are doing is obstructing because they're mad. They lost the election. They put up a flawed candidate, and they're doing everything they can essentially to undermine a sitting president. You talked about how...
Well, they're mad also because everything that Trump stands for is to, first of all, eradicate their socialist policies and their communist agendas. Mm-hmm. And so they hate him for that.
What about Paul Ryan? I mean, my theory, and tell me if you agree with this. That's what I was going to say. I think Paul Ryan is a wolf in sheep's clothing because obviously, remember, he's, I don't know if he's in the actual Gang of Eight, but he certainly undermined Trump.
He has a political brain in his brain cell.
Yeah, we have a horse farm, David Horowitz, and I've said many, many times, you always look in the eye of the horse to find its soul. And if Paul Ryan and before him John Boehner were a horse, I never would buy him. I mean, he's just...
You wouldn't feed him.
I wouldn't feed him either. That's true. If he's ugly, I don't feed him.
Well, but look, this is a problem of the Republican Party generally. You name me one other Republican, one, who on national TV in front of 50 million people would look Hillary Clinton in the eye and say, you're a liar and a crook.
Yeah, you need to go to jail.
She was both. This is something that I discussed in Big Agenda, Trump's plan to save America. It's Trump's willingness to do that. And Republicans, they avert their eyes. They have these manners which they won't violate. They don't want to embarrass their enemies. You can't win a political war that way.
No, and the little guy, the taxpayer, the guy who lives in flyover America, he does not have that political pull inside D.C. He doesn't have the money to pay all these political operatives to go in there and fight for him. This is something Donald Trump is doing. And I just pray to God, I'll be honest with you, that Trump realizes with this first bump in the road he got with having health care shot down, that he realizes this.
Yeah, but listen.
Yeah, I think that, look, the healthcare, they were between a rock and a hard place. What they should have done is just let Obamacare implode, but then they would be blamed, for the problems. So they tried to replace it, and that could not work. I think that this is going to work out well for the Republicans in the long run, because Obamacare is a disaster. It's going to collapse of its own weight, and then they can put the fixes in.
I don't understand why, and we use an intelligence analyst. I speak with her on a nightly basis, Denise Simon, and she and I were talking about this last night. We don't understand why the Republican Party didn't take that Obamacare massive bill, drop it down on the floor, and spend the next 6 months doing two things. Number one, exposing on every media outlet they could, every senator, every congressman doing this. Okay, here's the true numbers behind Obamacare. These are true numbers of what's going on with Obamacare in your lives. And do that for the next 6 months, while simultaneously going through it and nibbling away at everything possible, leaving nothing more than a rotting carcass by the end of these 6 months.
Because
and
the Democrats would have...
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
The Democrats would have blamed them for all the problems, all the people who lost their health care because of Obamacare's collapse, that they didn't try to do something to bend it. So I think they had to put in the effort. It's messy this way, but I think it's going to be politically more effective.
Obviously, I agree with what you're saying. I definitely do. But I also could not agree more with the fact that the Republican Party absolutely has no idea how to battle.
Yep. They back down.
Right. Well, Trump has shown it.
Trump is.
That's why the other 12 went down.
Mm-hmm.
Can you imagine John Kasich going up against Hillary Clinton?
No, John Kasich.
Oh, he's not going to fight. He's going to reach out his hand. He's going to try to compromise with them, and they're going to eat him for lunch.
Yep. I always say, the Democrats circle the wagons, the Republicans eat their young. And that's pretty much what happens. John Kasich, you kidding me? Hey, let's bring in more illegals, and let's totally collapse my state's economy. Why not? That's really the whole thing. We're talking with David Horowitz, and again, your book, going back into the 90s, Radical Son, really woke up my whole philosophy and what was going on in this country. But, David, when we come back after the break, I want to get into...
Thank God it did, or I would have never married you.
This is true. We're not like Mary Madeline and James Carville. We got to agree here politically. But, David, when we come back after a short break, I want to... Your whole list, your whole litany of books that you've written sort of is... I think almost a progression of where this country has come. Radical Son, then black skin privilege in the American dream, progressive racism, and now your new book, Big Agenda, and how President Trump plans to save America. But also your historical books that you did with Peter Collier about really the big families of this country, the Rockefellers, the Kennedys, the Fords, the Roosevelts. I'd love to talk about the Bilderbergs with you as well, that kind of situation, how this whole big agenda essentially is what we're seeing come to a head. And I really do believe our country's at a turning point. And I'm glad, David Horowitz, you're waking people up to exactly what we're doing. And I don't want to pull a, what's his face here, from baseball. If you come to a fork in the road, take it.
Oh, a Yogi Berra.
Yogi Berra. But that's really what we're at right now. We are at a major crossroads or a fork in the road. And I do believe if the sleeping giant does not hang in there and fight the radical leftists in this country that have now totally gotten into the D.C. circles, that we're in serious trouble. David Horowitz, hang in there. We'll be back right after the break on Cowboy Logic Radio.
Cowboys didn't dance, didn't wear designer shirts. Their hearts were filled with memories, their bodies filled with hurt. They would sit around the campfire.
Hi, thank you for listening. My name is Ron Phillips, and I'm the owner and operations manager of Talk America Radio. It is with great pride that I offer you these two 24/7 streams of some of the finest talk radio programming in the country, but I need your support. Talk America Radio is a listener-supported network. That means we need your help to continue to offer the quality programming you're hearing right now. Please visit talkamericaradio.us and click the Support Us button. You can contribute monthly or send us a one-time amount. We'll put it to good use continuing to share the American voice. Thank you.
Let me talk to you, black people. When you vote for blacks and put them in office under the banner of the Democrat Party, please explain to me what black people get as a result. This was not a nap that we have been taking. We are in a coma. You know what the interesting thing about pensions is? That's today's money given to people who ain't doing nothing for you today. Get off that black Democrat tit that they've been sucking on. Your country is being stolen from you, and the promise is being stolen from your children, and they're telling you it's all right while the rest of the world is trying to lap us. Well, why are we doing so poorly? 2 words: teachers' unions. Are you kidding me?
Black Man Thinking, Monday nights, 9 p.m.
This is Denise Simon. 18 hours a day, I live in a world as an intelligence analyst. Intelligence analyst. Intelligence analyst. Intelligence analyst. Intelligence analyst. What I find is reprehensible. What I find is terrifying. What I find is treasonous. 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 The mainstream media has completely failed the American people. 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 Join me for the Denise Simon Experience every Thursday night at 9 p.m. Eastern.
Hi, it's Mark Walters from Armed American Radio. You know, for nearly a decade, I've been educating, informing, and entertaining responsibly armed Americans. And during that time together, we've shared some ups and downs, haven't we? Trump's election saved our Supreme Court and no doubt the future of our gun rights for now. But now is not the time to lay down. The enemies of freedom are well-funded and more determined than ever. To keep up with the state of your gun rights, make sure to tune in to Armed American Radio right here on Talk America Radio, the new dominant voice in conservative talk radio.
You're listening to your local news source, WLBB, News Talk 1330 and FM 106.3.
Hey, everybody, they're back on again.
Cowboys didn't dance, didn't wear designer shirts. When their hearts were filled with memories, their bodies filled with hurt. They would sit around the campfire and exchange a piercing glare. Yes, back when the West was really wild, cowboys didn't dance.
Welcome back to Cowboy Logic Radio. I'm Donna Fiducia, along with Don Neuen. And our very special guest this entire hour has been, and will be, continue to be, David Horowitz, an esteemed author and founder and president of the David Horowitz Freedom Center, editor of Front Page Magazine, and all of his books, folks. You should get them, especially the latest, Big Agenda, which is out, and that's President Trump's plan to save America. But David, just...
And we need to also credit David Horowitz with the fact that
I would be
you would be single
liberal
at this point, or you would be married to someone else, because if you had a liberal bone in your body, I would have discarded you like a turkey carcass after Thanksgiving. Back to you, Donna.
This is true, because David and I, he was on the West Coast, I was more or less on the East Coast, but grew up in that very same radical 60s agenda. And it's very funny, David, because my mother, again, she was a union teacher, a social worker, pretty highly educated for somebody born in 1918. I'm going to date myself here, that she had a master's degree. And when she was 91 years old, I took her to vote, and I said, Mom, you are not going to cancel my vote this time. And she, 2008, she voted for John McCain. I finally got her to do a 180, but it took her 91 years. Anyhow, just during the break, David, we were talking, and I said going into the break how your whole litany of books kind of shows the progression of the left, starting with Radical Sun and black skin privilege and the American dream and progressive racism and now Big Agenda. But you also said you have the Black Book of the American Left. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, you can go. I have a website at blackbookoftheamericanleft.com. 7 volumes have been published so far. There's going to be 9. And it's all my writings about the left. And it really constitutes, it's like a history of how the left took over the Democratic Party and how it's systematically destroying this country. It's a good prelude to Trump's effort to save it. I think my book, Big Agenda, which is now it's 6 weeks on the New York Times bestseller list, even though of course, the Times is not going to review it, nor the Washington Post, nor will I be invited to be on an MSNBC or CNN panel. But it's a very good introduction to my ideas because a lot of this book, Big Agenda, it's about who the left is, how they operate, what could be done to defeat them, and why Trump is the perfect antidote to them.
The fact that Trump, Big Agenda is on the bestseller list, the New York Times bestseller list, without any kind of publicity from the left, A, shows how good it is and how so many people believe in what you're doing, and B, pretty much shows the agenda of the left, which kind of proves your point.
Yeah, I can give an example of why I think Trump is so good on this race issue. The Democratic Party, the reason we're in a civil war situation, the Democrats talk about a resistance. Their strategy, according to Feinstein, is to impeach Trump, and that's before he actually has hardly started. And why the Democrats? They're a secessionist party, just the way they were in 1861. The sanctuary cities. There are 500 sanctuary cities and counties. I'll bet you every last one of them is a Democrat-controlled one. Why are they at war with this country and with the Republicans? And the answer is that their ideology, their philosophy, is anti-American. It's a racist philosophy. They believe in race, gender, and class hierarchies, that your origins define you. Whereas the whole American idea is individual freedom and individual accountability, that we're all here because of a creator who has endowed us, who looks on us as equals, and endows us with these rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And so, as Americans, a fundamental American principle is that you don't look at somebody's origins, you look at who they are, what their merits are. That's what Martin Luther King stood for. You judge people on the content of their character, not the color of their skin. Whereas for Democrats, your skin color is primary, isn't it? If you're the right skin color, which is dark, you go to the head of the line for a college admission, the head of the line for a job, the head of the line for a promotion, the head of the line to be on boards, and a myriad other things. They have a phrase for it. This phrase, people of color. People of color isn't even English. We don't say crayons of color, but if you say colored people, you're a racist. So since it's an ideological construct, what does it mean? What is its use? Well, if you look at Mexico is composed of 2 main ethnic groups. The descendants of the Spanish conquistadors who slaughtered the indigenous Indians and their victims, the descendants of the survivors of the indigenous Indians. But when they cross the border, they're both people of color, therefore oppressed, therefore deserving certain sensitivities and privileges. If you wondered why the Democrats are so soft on our Islamic enemies, it's because they're people of color. Maharajas in India are people of color. Beheaders and crucifiers, Islamic beheaders in Syria and Iraq, those are people of color. The whole world is people of color except white people. White people are the oppressors, white people bad. That's the Democratic Party's view. Trump's view was expressed brilliantly in the inaugural. He said, if we love our country, we will learn to love each other. If you have patriotism in your heart, there is no room for prejudice. We are black and brown and white, but we all bleed patriot red. And that shows you that this battle, all these battles we are fighting, is really one battle. One is to defend the American idea of individual accountability and individual freedom. And the other is a socialist, racist idea. The Democratic Party is a racist party, and Republicans got to start saying that. That's who's on the other side.
You were, as we said...
and let me say, there's a whole chapter of my book, Big Agenda, Trump's Plan to Save America. It's called The Achilles Heel of the Democratic Party. And the Achilles heel of the Democratic Party is their racism. Democrats control every inner city of any significance in America 100% and have for 50 to 100 years. All the killing fields, Detroit, Chicago, Baltimore, St. Louis, Ferguson, all these cities, and I could name a dozen and more, all of them are 100% controlled by the Democratic Party. Everything that's wrong in the inner cities of America, every oppression of black people and Hispanics and poor whites that policy can affect, Democrats are 100% responsible for. But Republicans are too polite to mention this until Donald Trump. Donald Trump he's going to launch his New Deal for Black America, and that is going to blow up the political base of the Democratic Party when he does it.
How do you approach the black community? I mean, I really got to hand it to Donald Trump. He already is reaching out, and then the left, of course, rears its ugly head and says, well, he's just being racist. Blah, blah, blah.
Well, they mock him for it.
They mock him for it. When he's met with educators, Malcolm X, that famous saying, if you dedicate yourself to one political party and
that controls 2/3 of the government and they do nothing for you, you're not only a political chump, you're a traitor to your race. Mr. Horowitz, I had a dear mentor back in the late 70s and throughout the 80s that is a man that has passed away and that I miss dearly. And I can only imagine that he is doing cartwheels in his grave at this point. His name was Dr. Cleveland Denard. And I don't know whether you know or have heard of him, but he was the president of Atlanta Universities. So I, as a diehard conservative that was raised by parents that were educators, my dad's last position was at UCLA, was mentored by a black man that was running a black university system. And for the life of me, I don't understand the mindset of black Americans. And I'm not trying to drive this, a segment of this interview into blacks, but you were talking about what the Democrat Party was doing to the inner cities. Go ahead.
The answer.
I'm sorry?
Why should blacks support Republicans? When have Republicans stood up for them?
Well, you got a darn good point there.
40% of the kids in inner city schools drop out, don't graduate, are illiterate. 40% of the ones who graduate are functionally illiterate. And this has been going on for 20, 30 years. Where's the Republican Party? Well, you talk to Republicans, they say, well, we're not going to get the black vote, so why bother? But you show me the Republican who stood up and held the Democrats' feet to the fire over their oppression of the black community. And then I'll say, well, why don't blacks see this? That's
well, we were at the South Carolina Tea Party.
Where's the Republican that says the Democratic Party is a racist party? Name me one.
Well, you're talking to one of them.
We have, but we don't have the
but we're not politicians. We were at the South Carolina.
I'm talking about the Republic because you asked about the vote.
Yep.
And I'm talking about the Republican Party has not shown that it really cares about what happens to black people. And
no,
it
has not.
No, you're right.
And I confronted a senatorial candidate in South Carolina about 4 years ago at a convention, and I walked up to him and I introduced myself and I said, "Sir, let me ask you one question. In South Carolina, what is part of your platform that will bring black Americans back to the Republican Party where they belong?" And he looked at me like I had 9 heads, stood there, turned his head, and started talking to somebody else. I reached across the table and tapped him on the shoulder, and I said, "Sir, I guess you didn't hear me. What is it about your agenda? What on your platform is in place and designed to bring black Americans back to the Republican Party in South Carolina?" He ignored me a second time. I reached again across the table and tapped him on the shoulder, and I said, "Sir, you don't have a snowball in hell's chance of winning this election because the answer to my question is standing 5 feet from you. His name is K. Carl Smith, and he's the head of the Frederick Douglass Republicans. And you are so screwed because you don't get it." Mm-hmm. And that's the last time I ever heard of that man. He had no way of winning. Lindsey Graham pounded him into the ground for
unfortunately.
Yeah. But his answer was standing 5 feet from him.
Yeah. And Trump has mentioned Frederick Douglass on numerous occasions since he's been in office, and that's to his credit to try to wake up people because...
Well, that's because Trump and Bannon and Steve Miller, who happens to be a protege of mine, I've worked with him since he was in high school, they were all from the left. Mm-hmm. They all started out as Democrats and liberals. So they have the passion. And then, they're going to change the Republican Party. But the real problem so far has been the Republican Party.
Yeah, and hence that's why Ryan Care went down in flames. Given the fact that you went to Columbia, did you ever take a class with Cloward and or Piven, as in the Cloward and Piven strategy?
No. I'm much older than that.
Oh, okay.
They weren't around then. In fact, the most radical organization on the Columbia campus when I graduated in 1959 was the NACP.
Well, we've come a long way since then. Can you talk?
I want to ask a quick question. Has Donald Trump or anybody in his, as Steve or either of the two Steves, have they tapped you on the shoulder? If not, why? Why are they not tapping people like Mark Levin, Michael Savage? Where are the true experts? And so they.
Trump. Unfortunately, Trump was a little undisciplined during the campaign, and so he stepped on this message. But he had a speech in Cleveland of his New Deal for Black America, and it contained a $130 billion voucher program, and I was responsible for that. So, sure, they know what's going on. They're very smart people.
Wow, that's great. So did you actually get in touch with Donald Trump, or did they just tap your, Bannon and...
Well, they sent an email to Bannon.
Wow, that's awesome.
One of the problems with conservatives is that, we're realists programmed to expect the worst. And there's too much kind of carping. You have to think positively. And Trump has done amazing things so far. When with all the executive orders, his proposed budget, everything, he's just done amazing things. We have to have Republicans, we have to have conservatives, we have to have Trumpers who are optimistic. It was Antonio Gramsci, who was I think he stole this. I can't remember who he stole it from. But he was an Italian communist, and he said the revolutionary must have a pessimism of the intellect and an optimism of the will. So you can look and see the bad things, but you have to push the positive ones.
Absolutely. Can you talk a little bit about your books that you wrote on some of the big families, the Rockefellers, the Kennedys, the Fords? I'm assuming that all kind of goes back to the Bilderbergs, no?
No.
Oh, okay.
No,
I thought they did.
No.
Tell me how I'm wrong then.
Well, it's really kind of funny. Since I was a leftist, we did the Rockefeller book. And, in our view, the five Rockefeller brothers had divided up the world. And John D. III, who accompanied John Foster Dulles, who was an attorney from Standard Oil, they did the peace treaty with Japan. And John D. Rockefeller III accompanied Dulles when he went to do the peace treaty with Japan. So when I was researching the Rockefellers, I went to the Rockefeller, they had a library, and I asked, to see the memoir that John D. Rockefeller III had written. And all my leftist friends had said, "You've got to get that." And it was sealed until he died, or till the year 2020, whichever came later, something like that. And I had an interview with John D. Rockefeller III, and I asked him, I said, "Your memoir is sealed." And he looked to his aide and said, "Is it?" And the aide said, "Yes." And he said, "Oh, let the young man see it." So I looked at it. It was just 15 pages about art and things that had nothing to do with dividing the world. I think there is a tendency on the right to think too much in terms of conspiracies. It's usually interests that form, and it's the same thing with the left. People are always asking me, if Moscow is orchestrating or was orchestrating the left. And no, it's the ideas that do it, which is the interest of the left. It's the socialist idea, or the communist idea, which is the exact same idea as social justice. This fantasy of a world redeemed, and redeemed by them if they get enough power to do it, which is why they're so dangerous.
David Horowitz, we only have a few minutes left. It's going by way too fast as far as I'm concerned. Can you talk a little bit about Black Lives Matter? You have that book back in 2013, Black Skin Privilege and the American Dream. Talk a little bit about the whole Black Lives Matter movement.
The only skin privilege. It hurts blacks because they recruit blacks to universities like Harvard or MIT, even when they're not qualified. That's their skin privilege. But what that means is the dropout rates, the failure rates are much higher for blacks at those universities. So blacks suffer. The only people who benefit are the progressives who think they get to think good, well of themselves. The book Progressive Racism, it contains that pamphlet, Black Skin Privilege, and it's all my writings on race. So anybody interested, and of course, including some excerpts from Hating Whitey. But anybody who's interested in my views on race can read it there.
Yeah, just the titles of your books are so politically incorrect. You got to love it. David, what about big agenda? Talk a little bit about going forward. We have a couple more minutes left of what you feel now is facing Donald Trump besides the total opposition of the Democrat Party.
Well, the biggest problem he has is Republicans. the Democrats, they're a known quantity. He's got to get this tax cut through. Republicans have to wake up that there's a political war, and winning the war is more important than a particular battle. So they're divided, for example, over the border tax. They really have to find a way to resolve that. Because if Trump has too many losses here on big agendas, it's going to really damage him and the cause.
I think he almost.
I think that Trump.
Mm-hmm. No, go ahead.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Go ahead. No. Go ahead.
I think he almost approaches things like he did with the healthcare revamp, like he would in business, and he does delegate authority. The problem is he's delegating authority right now to people who are inept, like politicians and Paul Ryan.
Ryan is a big mistake to have him as speaker.
Yeah.
That's clear.
That's for sure. All right, we've been talking with David Horowitz. David, are we going to be able to see you on TV anywhere or anything of that nature anytime soon?
Well, I think I'm going to be on Lou Dobbs on Monday.
Awesome. Big fan
I'll
of
be
Lou's.
back.
Great. Good. It's great to talk to you, David. Again, everybody, on his website, well, you said you had the website Black Book of the American Left. That's a history, but also you can find him on Front Page Magazine at frontpagemagazine.com, Amazon, Barnes & Noble. Again, his book, Big Agenda, President Trump's Plan to Save America, is already a New York Times bestseller. And just because, David, you're so politically incorrect, obviously nobody on the left even wants to talk to you, that to make this a bestseller is just awesome. But folks, his book, as I mentioned in the interview, Radical Sun, is what woke me up. If you are a leftist, if you open your mind just a little bit, I think David Horowitz's writings, all of them, will really show you what the real agenda of the left is. And David Horowitz, we thank you so much for joining us here on Cowboy Logic Radio. Again, founder and president of the David Horowitz Freedom Center, editor, Front Page Magazine, and get his book, Big Agenda. It's available at all the usual stops, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, frontpagemagazine.com. David, thank you so much for joining us here on Cowboy Logic Radio.
Thank you both for having me.
You know, I always end with a quote, and I'm going to take this one from Aristotle. Educating the mind without educating the heart is no education at all. Everybody, we thank you so much for joining us. I'm Donna Fiducia, along with Don Neuen. Have a great week, everyone. Find us at cowboylogic.us, rednationrising.us. We'll see you next week, and God bless America.
Cowboys didn't dance, didn't wear designer shirts. Their hearts were filled with memories, their bodies filled with hurt. They would sit around the campfire and exchange a piercing glance. Back when the West was really wild, cowboys didn't dance, yes. When cowboys didn't dance, didn't wear designer shirts. When their hearts were filled with memories, their bodies filled with hurt. They would sit around the campfire and exchange a piercing glance. Back when the West was really wild, cowboys didn't dance.
Check us out on the web at cowboylogic.us.